Hello everyone, welcome to Vijay Mohan IAS Academy. Everyone, recently APPSC has completed Group 1 Mains examination. So, in today's video, I'll be talking about paper 4 of Group 1 Mains, which is related to economy and development of India and Andhra Pradesh. I'll be specifically talking about the analysis and also the model answers. That means what is the difficulty level of the paper and what is the difficulty level of each and every question, and I'll also provide a particular model answer to each and every question so that candidates will be able to understand what is the core answer for each question. Here, before going into the details of each and every question, I want to mention that this time the paper of Group 1 Mains, especially economy and economy paper, is a bit more lengthy compared to 2017 paper. The paper is lengthy because it demands students to answer 2 to 3 constituent parts in each question. That is the reason why this paper became a little bit lengthy. And one more thing is that in this year's paper there are some questions which are specific in nature. That means you need to provide a lot of facts and statistics for each and every question, for that matter each and every constituent part of the question, and some questions are open-ended. So in a way this year's paper is a very balanced paper. Though it is a very lengthy paper, it is a balanced paper and it is a good paper, and the difficulty level of the paper is moderate in nature. That is, it is not that much easy and at the same time it is not that much difficult to answer the questions. And one more important thing that I have noticed is that the questions related to Andhra Pradesh are some way related to the previous government. That means especially there was stress on vision strategy of the previous government, so it was also little bit difficult for the candidates to address the question. Further, in this video I will be addressing 10 questions and I will be providing model answers to 10 questions. The remaining 20 questions I will be dealing in the subsequent videos. Another disclaimer here is that these answers which I will be providing are only indicative in nature, they are not absolute in nature. So there might be another answers or another approach to the questions. So basically what I am providing will be the core aspect of the answer, and there may be some other answer or some other approach or some other constituent parts of the answer. So whatever I am providing will not be an absolute one, it will be only an indicative in nature, so that you have to keep that in mind. So next we will move into the specific question. The question which was asked in 1A, that is, state some of the notable initiatives taken by the government recently to boost the growth of manufacturing sector in India. This was the first question. So it is specifically asking about the notable initiatives which were taken by the government recently to boost the growth of manufacturing sector in India. This question is a moderately difficult question, or you can say it is one of the easy questions. So in order to introduce this question, you can write simply about the present manufacturing sector share in total GDP 16%, and the growth of manufacturing sector in India is important for success of Atmanirbhar Bharat, wealth creation and virtuous cycle of economy. Here wealth creation was mentioned in Economic Survey 2019-20 and virtuous cycle of economy was mentioned in Economic Survey 2018-19. See, by providing these two or these three, Atmanirbhar Bharat, wealth creation and virtuous cycle of economy, your answer is going to get value added, or value addition will be provided to your answer in the introduction itself. So it will be a value added introduction. Next we will move into the recent programs. So what are the recent notable initiatives or programs for the growth of manufacturing sector? You can say that National Manufacturing Policy 2011, Make in India, Skill India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, under it incentives for MSMEs, and National Investment and Manufacturing Zones, and FDI policy changes. So all these things are recent initiatives, and if a student write 1 or 2 points under all these initiatives, then the answer will be sufficient. For example, under National Manufacturing Policy 2011, the target set by the government is 25% share of manufacturing in total GDP. Similarly, in the case of Make in India, which was started in 2014. So similarly, FDI policy changes, in which several policy changes or FDI limits were changed in different sectors, including defense sector. So these are the programs you can mention in the answer. Apart from these programs, there are several other programs like ease of doing business reforms, and then product linked incentive scheme, etc. But on the whole, these are the main core programs which constitute the initiatives for the growth of manufacturing sector in India. One more thing is that this question doesn't require any conclusion to be written, because here it was asked about only some of the notable initiatives. So there is no need to write any conclusion as such. A conclusion is not mandatory for this type of questions. Next, we will move into the next question. Next question is related to agricultural productivity. So highlight some of the major factors which are leading to low agricultural productivity in India. So this question is specifically asking some of the factors which are leading to low agricultural productivity. In introduction, you can introduce that at present agricultural contribution to total GDP is 15% of GDP. This is approximately, and it is providing employment to 50% of the population, or 50% employment is provided by agriculture sector. So in a way, agriculture sector is very crucial, and agri productivity in particular is crucial for doubling farmers' income. So by simply putting all these 3 points, you can introduce your answer. And this introduction or these 3 points are sufficient to introduce the answer. Then you can directly go to the issues related to agricultural productivity. So one of the major issues is decreasing size of agricultural land holdings. To substantiate this point, you can write that the average size of land holdings in India in 2001 was less than 2 hectares, and continued dependence on the monsoon, inadequate access to irrigation, imbalanced use of soil nutrients resulting in loss of fertility of soil, uneven access to modern technology in different parts of the country, lack of access to formal agricultural credit, limited procurement of food grains by government agencies, failure to provide remunerative prices to farmers. These are the issues which are plaguing the agricultural productivity. There may be other points also, but the main points will be these 8 points. And these 8 points, if a student write these 8 points or 1 or 2 lines under these 8 points, then it will be sufficient for this question. And for this answer also, there is no necessity to write conclusion. However, if you write conclusion, then there will be a value addition, and the conclusion you can write by keeping in mind the recent programs. For example, recent programs like Agri Reform Laws, PM Kisan, Soil Health Cards, Agri Infrastructure Fund, Agri Export Policy 2018, etc. step in the right direction to improve the agricultural productivity. So in this way, you can provide a progressive conclusion to the answer. Next, we will move to the next question. So next question, 2A. So what are the factors which are responsible for the narrow tax base in India? Explain in brief. So it was the question was directly asking the factors which are responsible for the narrow tax base in India, and explain in brief. So this is also a type of moderate or below moderate or below average type of difficulty level question. And so in order to introduce this answer, you can simply introduce by saying that in India only 1.15% of people who are working actually pay the taxes. That is, the taxpayers are only 1.15% of the working population, and the tax to GDP ratio in India is around 17%, and which is low compared to all European nations or OECD nations, etc. So by providing these two stats, you are provided context to the body of the answer, or you in a way provided a link to the body of the answer. Then you can directly proceed to the main body of the answer, that is, what are the reasons for low tax base in India. First and foremost is informal economy, that is 85% of the Indian economy is informal economy, which is majorly a cash based economy. Cash based economy. And the other thing is that agricultural income is out of tax net, parallel economy, prevalence of tax evasion, nature of taxation, which is progressive taxation, and because of this there is disincentive for taxpayers to pay the tax, because as your income grows, then the taxation burden will be more, so people will be disincentivized to pay the tax. Then other point is that complex compliance procedure, which in a way leading to tax terrorism. So these are the reasons for low tax base in India. Apart from this, there might be other reasons, but these points will be the core for your answer. And if you provide conclusion to this answer, then there will be an additional or value addition to your answer. The conclusion will be that there are several recent programs like GST, Vivad Se Vishwas Tak, Taxpayers Charter, Transparent Taxation, Honoring the Honest, etc. These will provide or this will facilitate the improvement in the tax base in India. So in this way, if you conclude in a progressive way, then there is a chance that you might get half mark or 1 mark extra from the other candidates. So this will be suffice to answer this question particularly. Then we will move to the next question. Next question is related to public debt. So define public debt and give its components with reference to Indian government. Define public debt and give its components with reference to Indian government. It is specifically asking about Indian government, and explain the trends in public debt since 2010 onwards. It is somewhat difficult question because he is asking us to explain from 2010 onwards, so it is very difficult to remember the facts from 2010 onwards. And also here he is asking two constituent parts. First one is definition of public debt, and second one is trends in public debt. So you have to cover two aspects. So in a way it is also a lengthy question and above average difficulty level question. So for this question, if you want to introduce the question, then first you have to give definition. First you can provide definition directly. Public debt means all liabilities of central government which are contracted against the consolidated fund of India. In a way it is a simple definition and straight definition, and you can save your words and time with this simple definition. And then you can also say, or you can also put in your answer, that the debt to GDP ratio for the central government declined from 47.5% in 2011-12 to 45.7% in 2018-19. This was provided in the 9th edition of the status paper on the government debt. By providing this, the examiner or evaluator knows that you know the crux of the answer. That is, you will be knowing the public debt and what are the trends. So the reason for providing this in your introduction itself is that if you write this sentence in the introduction itself, then the evaluator knows that you have the idea about the question, you have the comprehensive idea about the public debt. Then you can also include under Article 292, it allows the Constitution allows the central government to borrow from outside the territory of the country. In a way, you are also giving idea about, you know, the differentiation between the internal debt and external debt. So these things will be suffice to introduce your answer. Then you can directly go into the components of public debt. You can give, there are two things, internal debt and external debt. Internal debt, you will be having government dated securities, treasury bills, intermediate treasury bills, that is 14-day treasury bills, then special, here it should be closed bracket, then special securities issued against small savings, special securities issued to public sector banks or Exim Bank, securities which are issued to international financial institutions, etc. Right, you can also mention that internal debt at present in 2018-19 is around 37.3% of the GDP. Then we will move into the external debt portion. Here, external debt. So most of the external debt is sourced from the multilateral agencies such as International Bank for Reconstruction and Development (IBRD), Asian Development Bank, etc., and official bilateral agencies. And you can give the quantity of the external debt. External debt is around 2.7% of GDP as at end March 2019, and it is accounted for 6.8% of the total public debt of the central government. And you can also write that there is no borrowing from international capital markets. And one more thing you can mention this, you can mention that the entire external debt in terms of original maturity is long term in nature, and a major part of is at fixed interest rates. So these two things, that is long term in nature and with a fixed interest rates, provide stability or sustainability of external debt as far as Indian debt is concerned. So with this, you have mentioned about internal debt and external debt briefly. Then you have to move to the other part of the question, that is trends in public debt since 2010 onwards. See, the trend since 2010 is that, so here the total public debt is 41.2% of GDP in 2012-13, which has reduced to nearly 40% in 2018-19. In the same way, you can write internal debt has decreased from 37.9% to 37.3% in 2018-19, from 2012-13 to 2018-19, and external debt has reduced from 3.3% of GDP in 2012-13 to 2.7% of GDP in 2018 and 19. By placing all these facts, your answer will be complete. However, it is very difficult to remember all these facts and put it in 10 minutes or write it in 10 minutes. So this is the core answer for this question. Next we will move into the next question. So next question is about Andhra Pradesh. So briefly give an account of revenue and fiscal deficit and the debt positions of Andhra Pradesh for the last 5 years since 2014-15. This question is also very much factual oriented, and it is difficult to remember the revenue, fiscal deficit and debt positions and since 2014-15, because we can remember up to 1 year, 2 years, but it is very difficult to remember from exactly from 2014 to 15. So it is also above average difficulty level question. Then in order to introduce this question, you can introduce it in a way that post bifurcation, the financial needs and expenditures of AP have been increasing, but the available resources are not being able to compensate the growing expenditure. In the next line, you can provide that the revenue deficit and fiscal deficit have shown mixed trend, that is, some year they are increasing and some year they are decreasing, while the public debt has persistently increased from 2014-15 to 2018-19. By writing this point in your introduction, the evaluator will be knowing that you will be having some comprehensive idea about the trends of revenue deficit, fiscal deficit and debt position of AP. Now you can move directly to the revenue deficit. Revenue deficit has decreased from 2.58% of GSDP in 14-15, that is June to March to, it has reduced to 2.46 in 16-17. Further, it has reduced to 1.51% of the GSDP by 2018-19. So you can add one more thing, that thus revenue deficit has shown a declining trend in AP from since 2014-15. Then you can move to fiscal deficit. During 14-15 June to March, the fiscal deficit is 3.89% of GSDP. However, it has increased to 4.42% by 16-17. Then the fiscal deficit has reduced to 3.83% by 2018-19. So these points will be sufficient for revenue deficit and fiscal deficit. Now you can move to public debt. So debt position, debt to GDP ratio, which was 28.25% of GSDP by 14-15 June to March, has increased to 28.51% by 2018-19, and in absolute terms it is over 2,61,989 crores. So public debt has shown an increasing trend in these 3 years. So in the conclusion, you can provide that increased spending requirements for infrastructure or for building activities or other things, and suboptimal central devolution. These two, that is increased spending requirements of the residual Andhra Pradesh state and suboptimal central devolution, are the reason for the elevated levels of revenue deficit, fiscal deficit and public debt in Andhra Pradesh. And these 2 points will be suffice to conclude your answer. So we will move into next question. So question number 3b, give an account of the mineral and forest resources of Andhra Pradesh. So it is a direct question. It is also an average question, or it is also an easy question compared to other questions. So it is saying about give an account of mineral as well as forest resources of Andhra Pradesh. In introduction, you can simply introduce by saying that forest and mineral resources are important for industrial and overall economic growth of the state, and forest and mineral resources are diversified in nature in AP or Andhra Pradesh. And you can directly go to mineral resources. AP is termed as Ratnagarbha because it is having many mineral resources, and you can provide some facts to strengthen your answer. The state mineral and mining sector contributed to rupees 2072 crore to the state exchequer during 2019-20. It was given in the economic survey, AP socio-economic survey 1920, and mines and minerals contributed 57% towards state's own non-tax revenue in the financial year 1920. This is also provided in the AP socio-economic survey 2019, socio-economic survey 2019-20. So these 3 sentences will provide value addition to your answer. Then you can go to main body of the answer. So here you can mention what are the important minerals available in Andhra Pradesh. So for example, the areas of Agnigundala and Bondalamuttu in Guntur district are famous for mining of copper, zinc, silver and other base metals. And also the state contains huge uranium deposits in Tummalapalli, YSR Kadapa district, and Dharwar supergroup meta sediments contain rich deposits of iron ore confining to Ballari Reserve Forest and surrounding areas in Anantapuram district, and many low grade iron ore deposits are in Prakasham, Krishna, Kurnool and YSR Kadapa districts, and many granite varieties are there. For example, Chimakurti granite in Prakasham district, and then gold mines of Chittoor and Anantapur districts, and byrates of Kadapa district. Majority of the byrates of India are produced from Andhra Pradesh state only. So briefly you can mention these minerals and the places where you can find them, and this will suffice as far as minerals are concerned. Then we can move into forest resources. So as far as forest resources are concerned, you can say that around 22 to 23% of AP's total geographical area is forest area is covered with forest, and the resources which are found in different types of forests you can mention. You can mention that moist deciduous forests are found in Srikakulam, Visakhapatnam and East Godavari districts of AP, and species we can found in those forests are Indian kino, Indian nettle, rosewood, etc. are found here. Then dry deciduous forests are found in Kadapa, Kurnool, parts of Chittoor and Nellore districts, and species such as red sanders, elephant apple, neem, teak, etc. are found here. So then thorny scrub forests are found in Kadapa, Kurnool, Chittoor, Anantapur districts. Here species are acacia, bamboo, etc. are grown. Then coastal forests found in coastal areas. Mangroves are also found in Godavari, Krishna, Guntur districts. Then you can come to wildlife. A wide range of wildlife is native to Eastern Ghats are found in AP. Then various birds visit the coastal lakes like Kolleru, Pulicat, such as seagulls, pelicans, storks, herons, ducks, flamingos, etc. In the conclusion, you can write that Andhra Pradesh is endowed with rich and varied forest and mineral resources, which are vital in state sustainable and inclusive development. Then we will move to the next question. Next is fourth question. What are the recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission with respect to the grant to local governments, fiscal deficit and FRBM Act? So, the question is asking about 14th Finance Commission recommendations with respect to specifically grant to local governments, fiscal deficit and FRBM Act. In the introduction, you can say that report of the 14th Finance Commission chaired by Y.V. Reddy. It was tabled in Parliament on February 24, 2015. Although this date is not necessary on February 24, 2015. And tax devolution should be primary source of transfer of funds to states, and the share of taxes of the center to the states is recommended to be increased from 32% to 42%. These two are broad recommendations by the 14th Finance Commission. And then you can directly go into the first aspect of the question, that is grant to local governments. So here you have to remember that 14th Finance Commission recommended many things. However, if you include 3 or 4 points or at least 3 points for each of the aspect of the question, then it will be suffice. Here, grants to local governments. The total grant to local governments for the period 15 to 20 has been fixed at rupees 2,87,436 crore, of which 2,292,000 crore is recommended to panchayats and 87,144 crore to municipalities. And then grants to local government should be in two parts. One is basic grant and the other is a performance grant. And these two words has to be right in verbatim, that is a basic grant and performance grant. For Gram Panchayat, 90% of the share will be basic grants and 10% will be performance grants. In a similar way, for municipalities, basic grants and performance grants will constitute 80% and 20% of the total grants respectively. Then performance grants are proposed to be introduced with a view to encourage the maintenance of states' receipts and expenditure accounts and bring about an increase in the state's own resources. So this is the recommendations regarding grants to local governments. Then we can move to the next issue, that is fiscal deficit. As far as fiscal deficit is concerned, the recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission include fiscal deficit of states should be aimed at 3% of the GSDP during the period 15 to 20. States will be eligible for a flexibility of 0.25% over this limit. They will be eligible for this flexibility if their debt to GDP ratio is less than or equal to 25% in the previous year. If the debt to GSDP ratio of the state is less than or equal to 25% in the previous year, then they are eligible for the flexibility of 0.25% in the fiscal deficit. So states will also have an option for an additional borrowing of 0.25% of their GDP if their interest payments are less than or equal to 10% of their revenue receipts in the previous year. So if their interest payments are less than or equal to 10% of their total revenue receipts in the previous year, then they will be having an option of additional borrowing of 0.25% of their GDP. So two flexibilities it has provided. One which was based on debt to GSDP ratio and the other was based on the interest payments. So next we will move to amendments to FRBM Act. FRBM Act 2003 should be amended to remove the definition of effective revenue deficit. That is difference between revenue deficit and grants for creation of capital assets. An independent financial council should be created to evaluate the fiscal policy implications of budget proposals before the budget is announced. States are advised to amend their FRBM Acts in a similar manner. Alternatively, FRBM Act may be placed with a debt ceiling and fiscal responsibility legislation. Alternatively, the FRBM Act may be replaced with a debt ceiling and fiscal responsibility legislation in order to bring greater legitimacy to fiscal management. So these are the main amendments or main recommendations which 14th Finance Commission provided regarding FRBM Act. It is not possible to provide all these recommendations in 10 minutes. So even if you provide 2 or 3 in each topic, then it will be sufficient to answer this question. Then we will move to the next question. Question 4b. So differentiate between revenue deficit, fiscal deficit and primary deficit. How does deficit financing impact the economy? Here also the question is asking about two constituent parts. One is definitional aspect and differentiation between revenue deficit, fiscal deficit and primary deficit, and it is asking about the deficit financing impact on the economy. So in the first part of the question, if you provide basic definitions of revenue deficit, fiscal deficit and primary deficit, then it will suffice to answer this question. So basic definitions of revenue deficit, fiscal deficit and primary deficit I am not providing here. Then you can directly move into the deficit financing. First, in order to address the impact of the deficit financing on economy, you just provide a brief about deficit financing, so that it will be providing a link line between the impact of the deficit financing. Here in deficit finance you can write, it is a practice which is adopted for financing the excess expenditure with outside resources, and the gap between the expenditure and revenue is financed by either printing of currency or through borrowing. So basically deficit financing is a practice which is adopted for financing the excess expenditure with outside resources, and this gap between expenditure and revenue is financed by either printing of currency or through borrowing. So this is basically deficit financing. By providing these two sentences, you can move to the main body, that is adverse effects of deficit financing. The adverse effects of deficit financing is increase in the financial burden leading to a vicious cycle, decline in investment which may result in BOP crisis, deficit spending rises interest rates resulting into crowding out effect. This word crowding out effect will provide value addition to your answer script. Then increase in money supply due to deficit financing may result into inflation. So here you have to provide interest rate increases and inflation increases. Then the deficit financing not only provides adverse effects, it is also have its importance or its positive effects, because you need to mention this positive effects also in the answer, because the question is specifically asked about how does deficit financing impact the economy. It doesn't ask you any adverse impacts or any positive impacts. So you have to provide both pros and cons of the deficit financing. Then the answer will be complete in nature. So in the positive side, deficit financing during recession times, it will be helpful, and deficit financing is helpful in resource mobilization, particularly in the developing countries. And also, if inflation is regulated, deficit financing will have a multiplier effect, and it will lead to promoting employment also. So by providing positive aspect of the deficit financing, then your answer will be completed. Then we will move to the next question. So question number 5a. This question is particularly based on Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act and 14th Finance Commission. The question says that highlight the areas of central assistance to Andhra Pradesh under the provisions of Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act and 14th Finance Commission. So this question is also of moderate difficulty level, and this question is specifically asking about areas of central assistance, whatever it may be. Maybe a financial central assistance, maybe assistance in terms of building state capital, or assistance in terms of providing educational and infrastructure facilities, etc. In the introduction, you can mention that under AP Reorganization Act and 14th Finance Commission, the central government has intended to provide assistance to Andhra Pradesh in several areas. With this simple statement, you can further proceed to the main body of the answer. In the answer, first we will deal with the central assistance under AP Reorganization Act. Under this special development package for 7 districts, under sections 46.1 and 46.2, rupees 350 crores will be provided to these districts, which are in Rayalaseema and North Coastal region, and until now center has released 1050 crores in 3 installments of 350 crores each. Next is Polavaram project under section 90. It was declared as a national project. And the next item is under section 94.1, 94.2, tax incentives to promote industrialization and economic growth. Then support for capital under section 6 and section 94.3 and 94.4. Government of India released rupees 1500 crore during years 2014 to 2017. And also educational institutions and infrastructure projects under schedule 13. So these are the areas where central assistance will be provided to Andhra Pradesh. And here you have to notice that special category status or special package doesn't come under the AP Reorganization Act. So you should not mention this special category status as such or special package in this answer. Then we will move to the assistance under 14th Finance Commission. 14th Finance Commission specifically recommended that the post-devolution revenue deficit grant of rupees 22,013 crores is to be paid to Andhra Pradesh for the 5-year period. Here the post-devolution revenue deficit grant word has to be there in your answer, because the 14th Finance Commission specifically said that even after the tax devolution, some states will be having revenue deficit. So in order to remove the difficulties of this revenue deficit after tax devolution, 14th Finance Commission has recommended that post-devolution revenue deficit grant has to be provided to some states, and in that Andhra Pradesh, it has recommended to provide 22,013 crores to Andhra Pradesh for the 5-year period of 14th Finance Commission. Next. So for 5B question, that is examine some of the major features of Andhra Pradesh budget for the financial year 2021 with special reference to fiscal deficit situation of the state. For this question, I have already provided answer in my question and answer series before examination. However, in that question, I have not dealt with the fiscal deficit situation of the AP. Please go through the video, for which the link was provided in the description, so that you will be able to understand the major features of the Andhra Pradesh budget. And you can add some fiscal deficit numbers to the answer which I have provided, so that the answer so that it will be suffice to answer this question. So with this, all 10 questions, first 10 questions of the question paper have been completed. In the next video, I will provide the next 10 questions. Thank you.